Let me just tell you quickly about Margot. There's two sides to her, as I know. I've known her for a while, not that long, as we've discovered yesterday, but we've known each other for a while, well over 10 years. And there's two very, very strong sides about Margot. And first thing, she's a mother, and she's a doer. Everything that she puts her mind to, everything that she's done, and most of you in this room know who she is and what she's achieved, she doesn't just talk about it, she does it. Not only does she do it, she sticks to her guns. So Margot, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you, and I look forward to this.
Thank you. I can tell you a lot about David, but I can tell you a lot that you already know, that he's an unbelievable chef, he's very skilled. When we look at where we come from, there are huge differences. I mean, it's opposites, really. But in those opposites and in those differences are incredible similarities.
So where did it all start for you?
Well, I'm Dutch by birth, and this is my mother, which must mean that the little one is me. And I grew up in a medium-sized town, in a medium-sized home. This is outside our house. We had a lovely park, and those daffodils still grow there every springtime, every May. I was born in May, so here I am 1 year old. My mother, being a wonderful woman, decided I needed to smell the daffodils, and I clearly have a better idea. I think if something's that pretty, we need to eat it. So I think it started at a young age. One of the big things that happened to us was that my father left when I was about this age. And my mother took care of us. My mother married again when I was 4. We had an allotment where we grew green beans, endives, spinach, and carrots. So when it was season, these bags would arrive, and the carrots, or the beans, or the spinach, or the endives would be topped and tailed, they would be blanched, and it would be frozen in packets that were just about enough for one meal for 4 or 5 people. And they would always be cooked the same way, overcooked. Maybe a little touch of butter, and a sprinkling of nutmeg. So that was life, how I grew up, and we used to go camping with a caravan and a little tent every year to similar places with the same friends. And but then there was my father. And my father fed me beer when I was 1. And clearly he saw a different picture in life. And this is in the 60s, you know. So what you did is you got married and you had a family. And I think my parents were one of the very first to get divorced in our town. And I don't remember it, but I know my brother said it was like, he had to go to school and his parents were getting divorced. And my father just had a spirit of adventure, a spirit of pioneering, of there needs to be excitement in life. And so every second weekend I would visit my dad and see these pockets of excitement. He used to take me skiing. And we used to go to a different town every time because we had more to explore and more to discover. And he would say to me when I was 8, let's go and eat frog's legs. And we'd eat, and I'd think, oh my God, frog's legs. And we'd go and eat frog legs or escargots. And it's not like we always used to go and eat out. It's not like he lived an extravagant life, but he searched for adventure and excitement. And that's what I've realized. I'm a pretty much a half-half. I'm also a mother, and I also take care, and I really watch the costs, and I really don't want to waste. Yeah, so that's me. I'm Dutch by birth and South African by choice. And then there was a little boy with a fishing rod.
Yes, this is me. Beautiful memories. This is Namibia. And it was also the place where I caught my very first fish. This is me with a galjoen. And this basically was the life. And sort of unbeknown to me at the time, I guess, this was my introduction to food. But literally what we used to do is my dad and myself used to go fishing. He was a storeman in the fishing factory. We used to head out with the Land Rover in the morning before school, catch a couple of cob, galjoen, whatever was running, steenbras maybe, and head home and to my mom's horror, drop it on the counter and head off to school and work. But the incredible thing is when we got home, that's what we ate, whether it was on the braai, whether it was a fish cake with all the belly, whether it was... You know, and we talk about head to tail, and there it was already. You know, it was this little dorpie in Namibia, which is part of South Africa at that time, and that's what we were doing. So the journey really started there for me without even knowing. My mom was one of 10 kids, Afrikaans family, so everything really happened around the kitchen table, and literally there was a sheep's head in the oven and green beans. It's always green beans, yeah. And always overcooked. Fuck,
And nutmeg. Did you get nutmeg?
no, we had white pepper.
Lucky.
Yeah.
Very lucky.
Like a green bean stew and white pepper, and a sheep's head, obviously, that we used to pick at. This is really what formed us, really, without us even really knowing. And I always knew I wanted to be in the hospitality industry, but chef was not really an option. So I went through my whole schooling sort of career, and 2 years of national service. And in about 1990, I arrived at the hotel, and was desperate for work. Really sort of walked from hotel to hotel on the foreshore, just right here. And really wanted to do something, and I was asking for a managerial sort of position from a traineeship. You know, what they used to do at that time in the 90s, 80s, 90s, was internship. So you can go there, you can get a job, and they will send you to college or whatever it was. And the chef said to me, listen, have you got any cooking experience? I said, no, of course, I was in the army, you know, cooking stew. I can handle myself, you know, surely. She said, well, the breakfast chef's on leave, do you want a job? I said, fuck, I'll take it, I got it. You know.
You just swore.
I didn't.
10 rand.
So, so I took the job and I cooked breakfast for a year at the hotel. And that was my start.
Yay. The new Tilbach Hotel. David Higgs, the chef, was born. So when was that?
1990.
Well, this is me in 1990. So while I was growing up, at about 5, I decided I knew exactly what I wanted to be. This is where I wanted to be. I wanted to be on stage, I wanted to be an actress, and I wanted to go to drama school. So that's what I did. After school, I applied. I was allowed in for the first year, and then they said, you know what? Maybe you should go see the world a little. And so I went to the next drama school because I thought, stuff you, really. Who are you to tell me what I should do when I'm 18? And I went to Amsterdam, and I got all the way through to the end, and they said, maybe you should go and see the world a little. So I got really upset, blamed the system, and I had a South African boyfriend. I mean, that's why I'm here. And he was a journalist, he was exciting. He was quite a bit older than me, and he was in exile. So, hey, father figure, excitement, you know, it's pretty obvious. He was offered a job in Zimbabwe because he was in exile, and this is 1989, and so he could not return to South Africa yet. And I said, sure, I was 20 by then, why not, really? I wasn't planning my life, I was planning my next few months. And we left, and we lived in Zimbabwe, and then suddenly it all started happening. Mandela was being released, all the other political prisoners were released, and he, as a journalist, and had to go to Zambia and cover the story, and I had a camera. So I became an instant photographer and documented Mandela and Walter Sisulu and Joe Slovo, and it was unbelievable. And what an amazing process to go through before then arriving in South Africa on the 6th of April, 1990. We arrived with 250 rand, and we went all the way from Harare to Bulawayo, through the good old Bophuthatswana, through Koster, and ended up in Johannesburg. And then I just sort of continued with photography, and I got involved with a little school that David Goldblatt had started in Johannesburg, and I really loved this. This is clearly before the digital age, so I was still in the dark room and printing, black and white, and loved it, and organized bursaries for students and people to get a job, but I was always cooking. I was always cooking and was really excited by cookbooks and going out for dinner with the little money we had. And I decided, it took a while, but at 23, that's what I wanted, that magic from the kitchen, that I wanted to do this for real, and not in my little kitchen at home. But there was nothing really available as a short course in Johannesburg. It was all sort of 3 years managerial. So I phoned around and I got a job. I had no experience. And this was with Chiro, and it was Chiro at the Ritz. I actually SMS'd him last night and said, why the hell was it called the Ritz? What was that? It wasn't a hotel. It was a restaurant in Parktown North. Chiro was Chiro Molinaro. Amazing mentor, because he just, I don't know, maybe he was taken aback a little bit by I just got in there and I wanted to play, I wanted to try, I wanted to cook. And I found everything amazing, and he let me. He let me play, and if he liked something I'd made, then he would say, hey, that's going on the specials tonight. And So I learned a lot there. I learned a lot about creativity, about trying things out, about stuffing things up. But I also learned about stock take, about ordering, and he really let me discover that power of service, that conquering of feeding 90 people and they all come at the same time. And it's that, I think, it's that adrenaline. And then I moved to Cape Town, where I got a job at the Bay Hotel. This is 20 years ago. And there was a British chef who was doing modern British food. And by then, Margot Pierre-White, the rock star in London 20 years ago, who called a spade and more, he was like, wow, his food was just so amazing. And when I did my trial evening at the Bay Hotel, I saw this little millefeuille of crab and potato and a little bit of tomato and lovely picked chervil, and I thought, oh, this is like Margot Pierre-White. Like, I have to get this job, because suddenly it was real fine dining, and the kitchen had real sections, like that was meat and that was vegetables and larder and pastry, and I wanted to work there, and it made sense, and it was this drive suddenly to more refinement and more perfection.
Sure. And I think in that structure that you were looking for, that was almost my bait. In the absolute chaos of what we were doing at this hotel, which had no real structure or anything, but fuck, that's what sucked you in, It was this.
20 rand.
It was cowboy cuisine. It was cowboy cuisine. There's a term in the kitchen that you call a cowboy, and basically it's a guy that just takes shortcuts. It's just any way to get through service and anything. There's no such thing as mise en place. Mise en place is something that we call, well, it's not what we call it, it is what it is. It's getting all your stuff in place for service. So basically there's this whole preparation period, which at this hotel was not really preparation, it was just like a circus, really. So when it got to service and it was accidentally busy or unusually busy or whatever, there was always shortcomings. So there were whole chickens in a deep fry, like, chef, we need more chickens, and they were like, I mean, it was carnage. But fuck, didn't that just excite you? Wasn't that really what it was all about? That's what sucked me in. I didn't want the structure at that time. This was a jewel, And my head chef was smoking pot under the extractor fan. That's no, true as Bob. That's what it was. There he was, Victor. I'll never forget it, and just sort of floated through every day. And I loved that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was my breakfast. Getting at 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, absolutely terrified for what was going to happen, because there'd be a whole queue of people, and I'd have to make a full house breakfast for 100 people from scratch. Scrambled eggs, fried eggs, hard-boiled omelets. I didn't know what I was doing, But that's where it started, and that was the beauty of what we did. And for the next 10 years, we talk about refinement. We talk about going through a process of being this cowboy, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just where's he gone? I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's a term that we use. A larger-than-life term. Anyway. So, the next 10 years for me were just absolutely incredible, in the sense that, everything was to improve from what that was for me. Going to competitions, getting involved with better jobs, seeking better jobs, getting involved with all aspects of the industry, whether it was industrial catering, teaching. And it taught me so much, And when I eventually got to 2000, when I had my first business of my own, all of that I'd learned, I realized, okay, this is how not to run a business, So let's consolidate and let's do this properly. And it was just an incredible journey for me as well.
And no deep fry.
Yes, well, has its place.
Yeah, so from the Bay, I became single, because the whole father figure excitement thing clearly didn't work out. And I was single and I had freedom, and I was in Africa, and all my mother said was like, come home, darling, come home. And I said, no way, I'm not coming home. And so I could actually suddenly do whatever I wanted. And there was this restaurant, Le Quartier Français, and it was like the top of the country in the early 90s. And I remember visiting Franschhoek, but I lived in Cape Town, and for a day, and standing and looking at that menu and thinking, oh my God, they serve rabbit. I want to work here. But it was an hour's drive, I didn't have a car, so that was a dream that could not come true. And then while I was at the Bay, one of the young chefs I worked with at Chiro's became the sous chef at Le Cache. And so we would hook up and he would sort of fetch me and I'd spend the day. And then suddenly he said, look, I can't do this small village kind of thing. I really need to go back to Joburg. Don't you want my job? And that was a sous chef job. And sous chef's second in charge. So I met with the owner, who were a couple, and Susan ran the hotel, and John was the chef. And we clicked. John and I clicked, and he clearly did things with sort of a base in Africa, and also not really following the rules. And in 1995, at the good old ripe age of 26, I started at Le Cache as sous chef. And what a journey, really. It became my nest, my home, my identity. And unfortunately, the marriage between Susan and John exploded 2 weeks before I started. And then John left. And Susan said, I would like you to take over. I'd like you to run it. And I promise to support you. I will be right behind you. And I said yes. And so I didn't come to Le Cache with my suitcase of ideas. I didn't have really a philosophy or some kind of picture of how I thought things should be. And in 2000, Susan sent Linda, the general manager, and me to the States. And she said, you have 3 internal flights, so figure out where you want to do a stage. And I said, well, I want to go to French Laundry, Napa Valley. I want to go to Jean-Georges in New York. And I want to go to Chicago. I really wanted to go to Charlie Trotter. And she said, that's quite sort of vast, different sort of time zones. And I said, I don't care. It's all closer to each other than it is to Cape Town. So I'd like to do it. And that for me was defining. Seriously, things really fell into place about a kitchen structure, about perfection, about your story, speaking your own language. And perfection, yeah, and it's not that it was not about this rush, not about, of course we get a kick when service goes great, but it was not about the cowboys, it was not about the madness, it was about creating some kind of piece where you can create. And so I think that's when big things started to happen, and I started to do little tasting menus. And in 2004, we decided to start the tasting room. And the tasting room would only serve tasting menus, which was a big thing because nobody else was doing that. And so this year the tasting room is 10 years old. And a year and a half ago, we've really sort of decided from this whole like evolving of the tasting room, we're constantly questioning what, how can we improve? What is it really about? What is it about? Do people really want to come and eat fine dining food and be intimidated? I don't think so, because I don't like it. So my brother, my dear brother, is a theater set designer. And he'd done a small change before, and he came and ate my food and used that as inspiration for the room. And he created the set for my food. And we got rid of tablecloths. We got rid of all the nonsense. I have a bit of a thing about getting rid of bullshit. And so there is no candle on the table because really, do you feel more cozy because there's a little flame? I don't get it.
I have candles on the table.
You have candles on. Well, you know.
Still.
That's fine.
They're not even real.
But that is fine.
I'm embarrassed to say.
So it could be BS, really, but anyway. And no more flowers, like flowers. Yeah, anyway. But then we went to... Do you have tablecloths?
Shut it.
But you know what? It's not about judging people and what they have, really. This is what I believe. I also believe that we had somehow reached some kind of level where I suddenly felt like I was this queen on a pedestal, And especially South Africans were like, ooh, that's not for us. That's, for all the fancy people that travel. And that's not what I was doing. It's not what I believe in. I believe in here, I celebrate South Africa, Southern Africa, through the food. And
you celebrated more than any of us, When we were talking about rooibos tea, infusing rooibos tea and this and that, she was already on kapokbos and bochu. What is she on about? Where? I'm on rooibos, you know what I mean? And that was Margot. She came from another country, for goodness sake, She's very South African now, probably more than I am. But yeah, that was our inspiration. That's what we look up to. And at Leinster Hall, I had a little restaurant behind Mount Nelson, And I remember someone came to the kitchen and said, Margot, Janse is in the restaurant. It was about 2004. What? But why? She didn't book. Didn't tell me, What's sort of going on? Sort of into the restaurant, hi, kind of a thing. We'd sort of met each other before, and she had a beautiful open lasagna of chicken, and it's one of my favorite dishes, butternut and stuff. I remember that. Anyway. But I think we talk about spaces, and spaces are a huge inspiration for me. The chef's role has become so much more than just the food on the plate.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I think different people take it on differently. But the chef's role has become so much greater than just the food for me. It's about this experience. And we talk about Noma, we talk about Albuli, we talk about all the things that you need to add to make a grand experience. And Rust and Freda was a place where I got to, and I was speaking to Jean. Obviously, so there's a huge gap in the middle which I like to avoid. I'm not really going to tell you about, but no, I pretty much lost everything, and then had to start again, kind of a thing. And basically, I went to Jean, and Jean, we approached each other, got in touch with each other, and he said, well, he wants to open a restaurant on this wine estate, And he said, it's going to be here. And I walked in, this was full of wine barrels. What's going on here? So he said, no, we'll take them out. Great. And it was moldy, and it was black. But when you walked into the space, you could just feel it, and I knew exactly what needed to happen there. And space inspires me. I love walking into a room and feeling what's going on. It could be modern, it could be old, it could be farm, it could be anything. But the space almost dictates to what you then present. And for me, that has sort of been one of my close felt sort of philosophies. Not really philosophy, but that's how I really feel about the experience. Because the experience for me is, like with Rust and Freda, is all of a sudden I could then go to a potter, David Walters in Franschhoek, and say to him, David, I'm looking for a plate that if you pour the sauce in here, it will flip over, and then down the other side, kind of a thing. Do you think we could make that? Sure, of course we can. And there we sat. And he sort of put his thumb into a plate, and all of a sudden I said, okay, make it a little bit smaller. And there we made these plates together, a range of, 12 plates. And wasn't that incredible to add to this whole creative experience, to complete the whole sort of circle? And not only that, I then got involved with the architect and an interior designer, which so often you walk into a restaurant and there's two things, a food and a menu, and a place where you sit and eat. There's absolutely no sort of integration. I'm not talking about obvious integration where you have a restaurant with a kitchen in the middle of it. I'm not talking about that, which I really enjoy because I can get a feel for what's going on in the room. So it was fantastic to be able to get involved in all stages of it and to be able to say to everybody, just calm down, okay, this is not really where we want to go. And make no mistake, an architect and an interior designer, I can't do without. But don't dictate to me, and I won't dictate to you. Let's work together and let's create this incredible experience, because you have the expertise and I have the expertise, to be able to do that. And that journey for me, with designing a chair for Rust and Freda, which took 8 takes, goes back to the guy, comes back, it's too far reclined, it's too far up, it's too, the little sort of armrests were too narrow, so they were slightly uncomfortable, so we made them a little bit wider. The cutlery was too sharp, so it dug into your fingers. Well, we don't want that. Let's do something else. And the interesting turn that you talk about going to London. London, I'd never been to London. It was 2007. And it was 4 days of Gordon Ramsay and various other people. And we came back, and he sat down on that Monday in the office. I'll never forget it. And we literally took the plans, we pushed it one side, and said, okay, now we start again. And that really was the attention to detail of Rust and Freda. And one last thing that we did. The front gates of Rust and Freda were there for hundreds of years. It's a beautiful farm if anybody's been. If you haven't been, go and visit. The farm gates were at Rust and Freda, and Jean said to me, he said, the entrance of this thing is very obvious. So I said, what are you talking about? He says, yeah, well, you drive through the gate and you drive to the restaurant and there you are. Let's move the gates. So I said, okay. And we took the front gates and we moved them into the vineyard. So when you drove in, there was more experience for you. You drive literally through the vineyard, you see the beautiful Helderberg Mountains, and then you arrive at this restaurant. And it's awesome to be able to work with people like that, and it's great to be able to have that sort of interaction with things. And then the whole thing just snowballed. I obviously was there for 4 years, and a mate phoned me from Josie and said to me, listen, I've got a couple of issues at the hotel. Could you possibly come and help me? Was really not looking to do anything that drastic, and ended up in Josie. Took the plane, got into the Gautrain. It was literally as the Gautrain started, I thought, geez, this is quite first world. Headed into the middle of the city, got off. It was a Sunday, and there was music jamming from somewhere. I don't know where it was going, but there was a party going somewhere. And it happened to be at this hotel that I walked in, and there was 400 people on the pool deck on a Sunday afternoon, thumping. I mean, it was just going bonkers. And no one had even spoken to me. They said, okay, I want to be here. This is where I want to be. And that is the energy of Johannesburg. It's the most beautiful place.
And that's energy at 500, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's how we got to sort of 500.
Yeah.
And again, how the space sort of dictates your style. It was very different. It is very different to what we do or what we did at Rust and Freda.
So how has it influenced your food? How has it changed your food?
This is the interesting thing. So just out of interest, this is now the restaurant and the whole process that we went through. The interesting thing about Joburg is anything is possible. So I get there and the guy said to me, we have a vegetable garden. So I said, where is it? No, it's on the roof. I've been on wine farms for all my life. I didn't have a vegetable garden, you know what I mean? And there it was on top of the roof. And all there was an aubergine plant with a mother of an aubergine like this. And I said, well, where's the rest of it? There was a bay leaf tree as well. And they said, well, nobody really sort of got stuck into it. And then 3 weeks later, we started planting, and there was a program in place, and it's a certified organic garden. But the interesting thing about this is that, you have this garden, you have these beautiful vegetables, and accidentally and organically, pardon the pun, you start thinking about things differently. Sort of strolling through the garden in the morning with the chefs, and we're talking, and literally that's what we do, And there's purple cabbage or purple cauliflower, and we say, well, what are we going to do with that? The process traditionally is you sit around a table together and we talk food. What's in season? What can we use? And it usually starts with a protein, the main sort of item. And all of a sudden, now we're walking through and we've got purple cauliflower. What are we going to do with the purple? We can't let it go off. We can't let it just stand there. We've got to use it. And it's a precious situation, and you've got to get it on the plate. It's beautiful how that sort of process sort of came about, naturally and organically. Which brings me to one of my favorite dishes, and it's a dish of kohlrabi, asparagus, black radish, all these beautiful ingredients that are in the garden. And it happened that as I normally do, I forgot a meeting with a journalist, and she was up in the garden already. I sort of ambled into work. They said, someone in the garden for you. I said, yeah, who's it? It was so-and-so magazine. So, oh, yeah? What are they here for? No, we're going to do the recipe today. And that's generally how my days go. I'm not particularly good with timekeeping or anything else. So I ended up in the garden, sort of ambling through the garden. As we were talking through these ingredients, we literally ended up at this dish, which is, to this day, one of my favorites. And it's a dish of kohlrabi puree. It's a dish of wild asparagus, as I've said, and it's a dish of farm kabeljau, finished off with prickly pear. And it's just one of those things that always just clicked with me. I don't have any signature dishes. But this is one of the dishes that are very close to my heart. The interesting thing about this is, and I talk about spaces, and I talk about the space dictates the plate. We've come from the garden, we've got vegetables, it's wild and it's woolly, and then in its presentation, it's got the structure, it's got the neatness, it's got the lines. And I guess that's what I'm talking about when I talk about space dictates to a certain extent. But obviously we've got to bring the creative vision and make sure that everything sort of comes together.
Pity it's not galjoen.
Pity it's not galjoen.
And why is it not galjoen?
It's on the red list.
Exactly. So there we are, like at sustainability and our responsibility. And celebrating here, celebrating now, celebrating what is around. This is my fridge, and so we got beautiful ducks. They look like they look very fatty and fresh and everything when they've just been killed and they arrive in your kitchen. So we decided to mature them because that works great for meat, and so we did that with duck. And then I ask myself, where does the duck come from? What am I going to do with this beautiful duck? So I look at where it came from, and it comes from Juisenberg Vlakte, half an hour away from us. And what happened at Juisenberg Vlakte? Like, what is the heritage of this duck? Funny, it's Dutch. The Dutch settled there, and they had grapes and brandy. And in Holland, we like to steep dried fruit in brandy. And either if it's apricots, it's boerenmeisjes, or grapes, it's boerenjongens. So I mixed them and called them boerenkinders. And so this is our boerenkinders, and we use brandy, and we use hanepoort instead of sugar. And I added some boegoe because I love it, our indigenous herb, and some vanilla. And I made that months ago, and so it's been sitting in this lovely broth of brandy. So I pureed it and thought, if that's where the duck comes from, it must go. And so, yeah, these are the things that then went into this dish. So how do I cook the duck? Let's go back to Dutch, let's make a Dutch oven. But let's use salt from a sacred site up in the Limpopo called Baleni salt, which is a mineral salt. It's just the site it's a hot spring that's been there for 2,000 years. Only women harvest this salt. And so we make a Dutch oven out of salt, and we chop lots of indigenous herbs in there, lots of kapokbos, our indigenous rosemary. And we bake this duck at a slow, low temperature. And here's mama in my ear, no wastage. So the flap of neck that comes on this duck, we cut it very thin and we fry it till it's crispy. The leg we cook, we slow cook it, we pick it and we fry it till it's crispy. And then we take some buckwheat, also strong Dutch heritage, and we puff it like a popcorn. And that's it, really. The sauce, we use grapes. We use grape juice, we reduce it, we add some verjus, which is green grape juice. And so for me, the dish makes sense because it's about where it came from. And that's what we're celebrating. And it's using nose to tail, really. That's a bit of a trend.
And talk about trends, and just to bring this to a close, a very, very special man graced the stage a couple of years ago. Now, thanks to Ravi, I was able to cook for him, or we were. And we were also able to sit around the table with him and have breakfast with him. Ferran Adria, an incredible, incredible man. We don't need to get into that. We all know who he is. We were allowed to pose a few questions to Ferran that morning. And the question came from trends. What do you think the next trend is going to be? And, everybody's waiting. This great man is going to say something. And he said, it doesn't matter what the next trend is. He said, what's really important is that we educate and we feed the children. But I just want to say that, when you try and do something sort of that for years and years that you're being exposed to the industry, and I've been very privileged to be in this industry, and I've worked exceptionally hard, and we've had many platforms. But I think only when the time is right, and only when you feel that it's right, it's important to share, and to grow that the special thing that you have, and which is exactly what you've done.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when Ferran Adria said that, we'd started about 6 months before with a project where we made a muffin, and we designed a muffin in such a way that it was carrying about 80%, 90% of the nutrition that a 4-year-old child needs in a day. And we selected a creche, a play school with 70 little children, and on a Friday we would bake this muffin. We would invite some guests and ask for 100 rand to participate, and if 5 people took part, then we had enough to bake these muffins. And they would help us, we would bake it and deliver it. If nobody came, we would just do it. And it grew. Like, people suddenly bought into this and said, well, you know what, I'm going to give you $3,000 so you can feed these children something else on another day of the week. So, okay. And so here came Mr. Tuesday. And then when I told friends about how Mr. Tuesday just gave us $3,000 so we could feed on a Tuesday chicken drumsticks, milk, and fruit, they said, well, I'll be Mr. Wednesday, and you better be Mrs. Thursday. And so the week filled up, and we had 5 days. We had a balanced diet. And it's not about children that are dying from hunger. It's children that are not developing because of malnutrition. They're not getting the right food. They need meat, they need vegetables, they need vitamin A, they need zinc, they need to grow their brain. And so suddenly we were on this roll, and people buy into it. People believe your credibility and want to help. And so from 2008 to 2014, from 70 children and a muffin, we are now responsible for 1,150 children every day getting a balanced meal. But I don't have any wings, and I don't have a halo, because that's not what it's about. It's not about the Mother Teresa kind of image. It's about doing something because it definitely feels right. And I cannot worry about a little beautiful carrot and if my beef only ate pasture and no grain, when around the corner kids are hungry. They don't even see meat. They might have it once a month.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what it's about. It's about the inspiration to do something. And for some people it's about giving money, and for others it's about starting something. And we need to feed the children. We need to make sure they have a brain so they can think and make decisions in the future.
Let that be the next trend, hopefully.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.